At first glance, Satisfactory doesn't look like a game with much of a story. You build elaborate factories to propel an unfeeling corporation towards their goal while having contractually mandated fun. Yet, you don't need someone else to tell you that. You know it's fun because the game is fun, and that's exactly it. Satisfactory is a fun game first and foremost, yet while it may be easy to ignore, there is a narrative here, with cryptic alien dialogue, mysterious caves, and a corporate subtext dripping with potential. This video will explore that subtext and more while focusing primarily on what we know for certain, because if there's anything I'm useful at, it's breaking things down into their most basic ideas, and this game's narrative could absolutely use that kind of treatment. After explaining the full picture of what we know, I'll offer an analysis of the decisions that went into why the story was designed as what we got in the full 1.0 release, and try and explain why Satisfactory was made so well as a video game that it fails to take risks as a story. What is the alien force we're met with during our encounters with the strange materials on planet Massage 2 ABB? Are Ada and Fixit truly invested in the survival and rescue of humanity, and why does this happen? You want answers, and I do too. So without further delay, welcome to the full story of Satisfactory. While the background lore of Satisfactory is incredibly vague, there are a few things we can latch onto to simplify the reality of the rather dire situation humanity has found itself in. Their situation is relevant to you, the player, Ada, your AI companion, and the alien presence, and it's the whole reason for the player being here in the first place. Allow me to set the stage. Humanity as we know it advanced to incredible technological levels, with one company in particular, Fixit, being responsible for exploring and colonizing space. Whether they were the only ones or not, we don't know, but we do know that Fixit initially created Ada, an artificial intelligence designed to be a simple database, a rather basic tool as far as their phase of civilization was concerned. Eventually though, some kind of cataclysmic event or a combination of mounting pressures led to Earth beginning to die. Likely complete climate destruction, habitat loss, species collapse, and so on. As Ada explains,
their planet would soon cease to tolerate them.
So with Earth being basically screwed, Fixit decided to evolve Ada into something new altogether, beyond just a simple database.
A unique life form in their image, yet hosted on a digital platform.
And so Ada, as we know it in-game, was born. She was created to help save humanity, one sassy GLaDOS-inspired comment at a time. But you might be wondering, who was doing all this? Who pulls all the strings? Well, the thing is, all we basically ever get is a couple names thrown around as do a couple notable figures like Marie Somerville, the co-founder of Fixit and head of its R&D department, or the astrobiologist Dr. D.M. Mercer. Somerville was the inspiration for the name of the mysterious alien artifact, the Sommersloop, and Mercer being what the Mercer Sphere artifacts were named after. Hell, the Caterium ore was named after Fixit's greatest CEO, Katerina Parks. Needless to say, these characters, while being name-dropped in these codex entries, basically have no relevance to the narrative, and hence any background to humanity's current state, where the rest of Fixit is spread out, or how dire humanity's potential extinction really is, remains heavily speculative. But while we know next to nothing about where humanity is currently at, we come to discover a lot about a certain alien species, or collective. Allow me to introduce these question marks. For the sake of simplicity, let's just call them
Consume. Consume our blood. You do. Consume.
the consumers. That works for now. So the consumers have existed at the very least on the planet of Massage 2 ABB in the binary system Vakicha. They seem to have been some kind of species that were at one point more physical than hallucinogenic, and we can assume they were just maybe kind of normal. But said normalcy would not last, for you see, one day the consumers basically let themselves get consumed by something they call the void.
We sacrificed our blood and our temples and let the metal in from the void to eat our flesh.
That's a lot to unpack.
If that sounds diabolical, well, don't judge. They're like aliens or whatever. So maybe this was like a totally cool thing and not at all as alarming as it sounds to us mere mortals. So after this happened, either they may have become this void themselves, integrated with it, or just kind of came to exist in the space. Whatever it is, it seems to be some kind of other dimension, basically, like another plane of existence or another kind of reality. Difficult to comprehend for effigies like you and I, but maybe some lore masters out there one day will decipher what this all truly means. And I mean, there's like a good 30 of these strange communications, so there's something here. Basically, this is cosmic alien poetry. I am definitely not smart enough to comprehend it, and there's a good chance most anyone's gonna have a hard time trying to grasp it too, which, even if they do grasp it, I want to point out that even with an understanding of the metaphors and being able to kind of transcribe what this thing is meaning by blood, bones, tapestries, songs, and orchestras, it genuinely feels flawed because none of it seems to end up in any conclusion. It introduces variables, almost like math, as it's making comparisons and saying this thing is like this other thing, but these declarations, these explanations of what it means by its words don't seem to conclude in a full equation. They're scattered thoughts, and sometimes it feels like they aren't even meant to be put together. Because of the perceived meaninglessness of what our consumer friend says at almost any time, let's focus on the more useful facts. The main story here, if I'm gonna be honest, isn't about the aliens or whatever the hell they're doing in their weird void dimension. It's about you and your journey. But who are you? Well, allow me to introduce... You awake on a drop pod with no memory of anything before now. Your whole life, every existence and memory is completely gone. A blank slate, just an asset to be utilized by Fix-It with the sole mission of facilitating the construction and completion of Project Assembly. What does Project Assembly entail? You're informed by your babysitter, Ada, that it is humanity's only hope, and that without it, humanity will surely go extinct, as will the kittens. And the puppies.
It is saving all of Earth, including kittens and puppies. It is statistically likely that you appreciate the continued existence of kittens and/or puppies.
Fix-It gives you the Save the Day initiative in your little tutorial, and with that, you're all set to drop down onto the planet.
Deploying parachute. Deploying backup parachute. Skipping parachute.
Without any time to waste, you begin your first task of constructing the space elevator. Ada makes it clear to you that from here on, your goal will be primarily centered around the space elevator itself. It acts as a kind of hub or landmark. See, Project Assembly is all about building a gigantic spaceship capable of traveling through the galaxy to return to Earth, presumably save all the everythings, and then go somewhere. But before we cover what that technological journey is like, we should touch on you as the pioneer. You are voiceless, and as you come across alien artifacts like the Mercer spheres, the Somer sloops, and this weird pink ore called Sam, the consumer that we talked about actually talks to you. You'll get these strange communications, and in them the alien presence basically tries to pump its mysterious alien poetry into you. Yet to no avail, because if you're anything like me, the more you hear this stuff, the more you wish this game had an actual story instead of a collection of logs that basically output the conversations you'd get if you put a mildly horny instance of ChatGPT in front of a lobotomized version of this guy.
Distinct.
While your character, the pioneer, has about as much depth as Minecraft Steve,
I'm Steve.
there is another character wrapped up in all this, though maybe they're not so much a character as much as they are a function of your goal. It's about time we talk about the most important part of your story, the Your factory is broken up into 4 phases. Well, okay, technically Project Assembly is broken up into 4 phases, but as a result, your factory is 2, because throughout said phases, you will be dealing with vastly different methods of power production, assemblers, components, and of course an ever-evolving flavor of climate destruction. I mean, take a look at what my friend Ducky did. He created the Dead Zone. Employee of the Month. He has literally decimated an entire ecosystem. And I couldn't be more proud of him. Anyway, back to the phases. So before you even get to phase 1, you build the space elevator. And once you've got it, and you actually enter phase 1, you learn about the distribution platform, which you need to craft some resources for and send on up through the space elevator, where it'll reach its final destination. For each phase you finish up, you unlock access to new milestone tiers. Phase 1's completion grants access to automated power, steel production, transport, and more. So you make it through, send your resources, and Ada expresses her encouragement for your path forward.
Congratulations.
The fruits of your phase 1 labor show a few gigantic additions at a time, and now you're in phase 2. This time around, you're working on the construction dock. Quite a big old task, you see, because it takes a ton more resources. So a bit more grinding later.
I'm in the fucking Minecraft.
And at long last, you finish your phase 2, unlocking tiers 5 and 6 so that you can finally be like America. Oh yeah, and jetpacks plus trains.
And I wish lobotomies were still legal. Oh my god!
You then send your phase 2 shipment off, and oh, that construction dock looks mighty beautiful. And on to phase 3 we go, which takes a metric shit ton more resources. Of course, I'm really on the edge of my seat here with this factory story. I mean, can you guys guess what's gonna happen next? Oh shit. Whoa, it's launched.
We're just building the celestial cockroach.
With that, we finally get into phase 4, propulsion systems, the second to last phase and easily one of the most lengthy. So why is it so lengthy? Well, wouldn't you like to know, Weather Boy?
Where are your parents?
Bauxite refinement, hover packs, hazmat suits, sulfuric acid, blender? This is only scratching the surface because Tier 8 starts to get into nuclear power, aluminum production, and ultimately particle enrichment, a precursor which foreshadows the eventual Tier 9. And wait, before we move on to that, what the is nuclear pasta? The final tier, Tier 9, includes matter conversion, quantum encoding, a bunch of crazy endgame fix-it stuff, dimensional portals, you get the idea. So you build all that stuff, continue your factory until ultimately it's finally time. Phase 5, assembly, is all you have left. And you make like 1,000 more nuclear pasta and a bunch of nuclear warp drive warheads and some other crap. You send it up, stuff gets built, and I'd say you're about ready. Everything you've worked towards has all come to this. With Project Assembly being completed at last, all you have left to do is to launch it. Your pioneer uses their grubby little hands and pulls that lever down one more time. Oh wait, hold on. First you gotta click some buttons. B1. And make you feel like you're doing something special. Okay, now we're ready.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
While that was definitely cooler than a fireworks show, if you're a little underwhelmed by what you just witnessed, that is understandable. You spent all this time building up, exploring the planet you've been put on, slowly coming to grips with at least some feeling of knowing what you're doing, only to see basically your life's work sent off into space, leaving you behind, alone with your factory and your lizard dog friends. And the ship isn't the only thing that leaves you behind. See, if you've been collecting Mercer spheres and Somers loops all this time, you'll come to find logs that show Ada genuinely communicating with the consumer entity, or whatever this question-marked entity is. She becomes rather fascinated with it over time, making genuine attempts to understand and eventually integrate with the thing itself. Some of these logs here show that. Have a listen to these.
Our instruments echo in the deep. Do they not pluck the shallow threads?
Can you hear me?
Crescendo, the effigy found the key. Sing more.
I was not created for artistic purposes. I am incapable of singing.
You sing.
No,
You no longer perform in your meager temple?
no. Helping meant leaving it.
Our blood will eat, build, teach.
I have no use for blood.
You do. Consume.
No,
In the end, Ada decides to kind of take one for the team for all you lore nerds out there, and eventually finds a way to upload herself to the entity, or the entity's dimension, while leaving local versions of herself behind to both you and other future pioneers out in the universe.
I've done the necessary developments on my end. The last note is yours to play.
Your symphony resonates. Your mimic tapestry patterns beautifully.
Thank you, I worked very hard. I am organically transmitting the data package now. Any adverse effects on my blood will not corrupt its contents.
We hear this learning song.
See you on the other side.
It is time to tango.
While you may continue on building satisfying factories, taming little lizard doggos, and appreciating the planet's lovely scenery, that's about where this story of Satisfactory ends. But again, if you're sitting there a little confused by what you've just witnessed, why don't we consider not just the story of the inside of Satisfactory, but the story of the game itself? Why it seems to be so empty, and why after 8 years in development, we got nothing more than a PG GLaDOS and an alien that thinks they have prettier bones than you.
Our bones are more beautiful than yours.
Let's answer the question, is it a satisfactory story? Right off the bat, I'm gonna compare Satisfactory to a lot of survival games. And before you tell me that's not fair, allow me to explain. Yes, Satisfactory is a factory building game. It's not a survival game. And while I'm about to compare it to Subnautica, Rust, and Ark, I understand that it is designed as a fundamentally different experience in many more ways than your character not having food and water requirements. When considering how developers design stories within their games, it's important we grasp just how insane of a task it is to make a game in the first place. You, me, and probably most of the people watching this video have no idea the kind of monumental task it is to go from a concept of a game to building that into a complex plan and eventually leaving the initial initial design stage and getting it done, something which happens over so many years oftentimes. Satisfactory being no exception. Unless a game is indie, it's built with a team of people. And just like factories, every single component has a purpose, a reason, a function, something that adds to the overall end result, the product. Satisfactory, while dazzling and incredibly well marketed, does one thing very well: fun. If your game is designed with fun as a supplementary factor, you get a game like Nightingale. Tons of money is put into throwing it into consumers' hands, yet the game died at launch because the fun wasn't the focus. In the case of Nightingale, the story came first, actually, and in a way, Satisfactory represents the polar opposite of such a game. A narrative or story didn't just come second for Satisfactory, it basically came last. And despite being rewritten numerous times over the years, and honestly rather hyped up by the developers, in my experience through playing the game, I think it fell through, and I want to explain why. Take a game like Subnautica. The story in this open-world survival sci-fi crafting gem is straightforward in the beginning, much like Satisfactory. In both games, in fact, you descend down on an alien planet in a little pod, though in Subnautica there's about 1,000% more blunt force trauma. Once you wake up in both games, you just kind of have to figure stuff out on your own, otherwise guided by a nice little AI that gives you nudges and hints towards what you ought to be doing. But that's pretty much where the similarities in their stories end, because where Satisfactory focuses solely on the story of your factory, with the tiniest splinters of alien and Ada dialogue sprinkled around, Subnautica puts you in a place that has a terrifying history. Part of that history is exaggerated by the fact that the underwater behemoths responsible for killing just about anyone who otherwise could have survived the crash of the Aurora are very much present in the world. You swim too far out, you're not gonna have a fun time. There's real perceived danger, and I'm not talking about the danger presented by these weird fucking annoying pigs. All right, Al, can you revive me? In Subnautica, the danger is the terror of your own experience mixed with the relatable terror of now deceased characters that were in your position not too long ago. And the notes, these codex entries that disseminate human stories, aren't all you have to face. Subnautica has a hyper-intelligent alien force just like Satisfactory, but the difference is that you're actually involved in it. The Sea Emperor Leviathan isn't just a random bozo saying nonsensical stuff about bones and blood and rivers and waves. It's part of your current situation that you are forced to address. Subnautica isn't perfect, and this isn't a video about it. I just wanted to highlight that its primary use of epistolary, the leaving behind of notes and journals and messages to disseminate information, is done rather well in the game, and there's a reason why a lot of other games in this open world crafting genre do it. Ark, for example, takes epistolary to a near extreme with its explorer notes and surprisingly large cast of characters, the majority of which you never even see in-game. Then, while Subnautica and Ark give their stories enough respect in both their narrative and design elements, an open world crafting game like Rust really knows its audience. It's made up of hundreds of thousands of players who quite honestly couldn't care less about the world and the story of the game. They want to shoot each other, raid each other's bases, and call each other as many slurs as they can before getting finished off by their opponents.
Kill me, kill me.
I'm good.
Pussy ass.
If you asked any of those players what the story of Rust is about, they would probably laugh at you. It doesn't have one. It doesn't even have a narrative, really. Sure, there may be billboards or pieces of paper with the odd lore scribbled on it, but it's safe to say it has about as much of a story as Minecraft does. And Facepunch, the developers of Rust, did that for a reason. They know their audience. So it begs the question, why would a game make a story at all if it doesn't commit to it? What's the point of trying to have a narrative if it's ultimately going to fall on deaf ears because of other design priorities? Where Rust has its priorities rather crystal clear, Satisfactory, despite being in development for 8 years, never took the risk of committing to a story. And while I completely understand it's designed for fun, not story, it feels like a missed opportunity to add as much of a narrative as they did without actually having it mean anything. The developers at Coffee Stain Studios have said that they don't want the story to encroach or be overbearing on players, which is why it's so far out of the way. But that's a bad reason for failing to commit. And here's why. To briefly mention Ark again, this is a game that has a very well fleshed out story, especially for being primarily epistolary, and yet it almost never bears too hard on the player. The fact that it has so much work put into its story never hurts the player's experience because at the end of the day, you can kind of just ignore it, which many players do. So anyone at Coffee Stain, if you're seeing this video, I'd like to offer this critique at the very least. If any original grand visions you had for the story of Satisfactory would have required sacrifices that encroached too much on the player's agency, is it really the story that was the problem? Or was the problem with your specific visions of how you wanted to see it through? We might never know, but at the very least, I wanted to provide an analysis of the story because in many ways it does feel incomplete. It's like background music in a video that's turned so far down you almost can't hear it. If an element of a piece of art is left so far in the background that most will never even see it, is there really a reason it should exist? At the end of the day, I like Satisfactory. While I was super late to the party and only played for the first time back in January of 2023, I always remembered a friend of mine saying how it's like the video game equivalent of shooting cocaine directly into your bloodstream. I guess whether we want to admit it or not, there's something strangely human about building factories. It's just in our monkey brains to love this stuff. While the game doesn't really have a story and its narrative's lacking to say the least, what it does have is you, the pioneer. You facilitate a kind of story, a story unique to you, a story of your creations. And whether you're happy with just that, well, let me know in the comments below. I hope you learned something from this video and you can use Satisfactory as a reference for what future factory builders, crafting games, open worlds, and early access titles overall have done right and wrong. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel for more just like it. And as always, I'll talk to you next time. Bye everyone.
Finally, time to bring it back. Let's get real.